Oh my goodness, what an exciting episode of Retro Trekkers we have tonight. Oh my goodness, one of the best episodes ever, one of the best guests ever, and of course, the usual idiots. So we should get started.
Retro Trekkers. Get down with the retro. Retro Trekkers. Capt'n John and Commander Joe. Retro Trekkers. We love our Star Trek. Retro Trekkers. The nerd muscles get the facts. Retro Trekkers.
Welcome to Retro Trekkers. I'm Captain John. This is the show where we recap and review classic and maybe not so classic. I mean, Star Trek, we just love it. The good and the bad. Because really, how bad is bad Star Trek? It can be pretty bad, but in a fun way, I find. And that's our show. So good night. No. That's just dumb. It's not just me who makes the space station spin around this stinky planet. SB-80 also has one of the best damn commanders in the whole damn Federation. Have you met Commander Joe Townsel?
Hello, sir. You know, it brings to mind an old Klingon proverb.
Oh.
Yeah, Star Trek is like pizza. I think you know where I'm going with this.
I do.
And I do have to thank you for including me in the Mad Magazine reference of the usual gang of idiots. I definitely wear that mantle proudly. Thank you, sir. And finally, I think I'm happy to report, I think I am finally over the PTSD of watching Section 31 last week. Thank God.
Well, speaking of which, that episode, Section 31, the made-for-TV movie, failed pilot from Modern Trek, it just really made us want to make it up to our guest. And our guest last week was just so patient and so kind, and he's back again. And we've got a good episode for him. Eric Kramer, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, my goodness. Thanks for having me. My glass has not been empty since last week.
We all have our methods of coping.
Wow.
Section 31, we just can't drink you off our minds. Melody Jean's here. When people say disco for Discovery, I think of disco from the 70s. We do too. Hence our music.
Yes.
We've got Raphael, who for some reason is typing backwards.
Well, it is the mirror universe tonight, so very clever.
That's true. And look, Raphael's got his jersey on. Raphael's in uniform.
Oh, wonderful.
Ensign Rosario, welcome aboard.
But I ask you, does anybody wear the uniform better than Eric? I don't think so.
Eric cuts a fine figure. Considering we're still waiting for our shirts to shrink. These suckers shrink.
I did the first hot laundry with this.
Yeah.
It's a little tighter. I think it needs one more.
I hope so. If not, you let me know, and I'll go to the bursar and I'll make sure this works out.
I mean, I'm afraid to wash it to shrink mine because it's so comfy right now.
I hate to say how comfortable mine is, but I've got really fat around Christmas, and I just have not dedicated myself to getting rid of it. Say, friends, what do you say we talk about Mirror, Mirror from TOS, those old scientists?
Yes, please.
Let's start talking about it. And where's your segment, John? There it is. Let's start talking about the Genesis. So, as you may or may not already know, this episode, Mirror, Mirror, it's from the original series of Star Trek, second season. It is the 10th episode, kind of right in that middle sweet spot where I think it should have been, actually. It originally aired in 1967 on the date of October 6th. It is written by Jerome Bixby, who has quite a history himself. He's a very, very interesting man and wrote some good stuff for Star Trek. It's directed by one of Star Trek's greatest directors. He is tied for having directed the most episodes. He's also a veteran of Lucille Ball's show, I Love Lucy. Where he was a very prolific director, Mark Daniels.
Yes.
Mark Daniels and Jerome Bixby actually were co-nominated for this episode of Star Trek for was it the Nebula Award? They are, this was a very well-received and well-respected episode. And fellas, just your first impressions. Eric, what's your first impression? When I say mirror, mirror, what did you think?
You know what? And we'll get into this. I actually thought all the players were at the top of their game.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like everybody shone. George Takei, I thought it was like one of the best episodes he ever did.
Interesting.
Star Trek. Nichelle Nichols was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Bill Shatner was nice and restrained and not too Shatnery. But Nimoy was great. As far as watching another actor make choices, like he could have gone full on in this, the Vulcans embrace being, badasses and stuff. But no, it's still, Vulcans are still logical.
Yes.
He sits in that place, but he is the scariest motherfucker in that universe.
Indeed. I think you can never go wrong.
Want to fuck with.
Yeah. I think you can never go wrong in the original series I think I just want to watch Nimoy to watch his acting. Because he is a powerhouse on this series. As much as we all go, oh, Shatner's just like, all this in a bag of chips. He's the Bellagio fountain. He's, he's fireworks over Mount Rushmore. He's like the biggest show on earth.
Right.
And at the same time, there's Nimoy working in degrees and increments. And yeah, I absolutely can agree with you off the bat that Nimoy is great because he is playing, like Shatner, he is playing two versions of his character.
Right.
You get to see both. And I remember feeling this way at some point when I was watching. It might have been the 25th time I watched this one, maybe the 50th. I remember thinking, wow, for Nimoy, I wonder if he made that choice to go, well, here's, like our universe Spock, and here's the mirror universe Spock. And I'm going to be somewhere in between so that you can see a little good in the good Spock, but you can see a little evil in the evil Spock.
Well, you know that he did his homework and went, okay, so what would Vulcans do in this dimension? They would look at everything that's going on. They know, he admits in the end, he knows exactly where this empire is going.
Yeah.
But they play it to their advantage.
Joe Townsel, what does mirror, mirror mean to you, my friend?
All the things you, both you gentlemen have mentioned, as well as just, again, pretty much the superior acting, the duality of the characters. I'll touch on this more and down and dirty, or maybe tidbits or both. But the fact that it could have been a much different episode as originally written, as originally, envisioned. And I think they definitely went the right direction with the end result. And, it's a classic. They're in the truest sense of the word. I mean, stands the test of time. It was great then. It's great now. Always will be. And there you go.
Let's get right to the beats because they are especially good this week, folks.
I appreciate that. Retro Trekkers ask the burning question. Magic mirror on the wall. Which is the most badass episode of them all? It just might be this one from the original series. Mirror, mirror, It all begins as the Enterprise orbits a planet ruled by the Halkan pacifists, who make a bold fashion choice with their white hair and blue dots on their foreheads. Captain Kirk, Bones, Uhura, and Scotty have beamed on down to convince the Halkan leader to allow the Federation mining rights. The Halkan's response? No way, Jose. Now, why is Uhura part of this away team anyway? Well, just in case they accidentally beam to a parallel universe where the lovely communications officer wears a sexy uniform with a bare midriff. And, as it turns out, this is every red-blooded crewman's lucky day. The landing party begins their beam up to the Enterprise, but something goes a little caca. In space, the Enterprise flips back and forth, right to left. Inexplicably, the befuddled quartet finds themselves in an altered transporter room. They all have on new badass uniforms and Spock has a goatee. Finally, there are intimidating murals of a sword stabbing the planet Earth on every doorway. In this wacky universe, there is no United Federation of Planets. Instead, there is an evil empire that would put the Klingons and Romulans to shame. Mirror Spock blames hapless Lieutenant Kyle for the transporter mishap. Your agonizer, please. Well, Kyle whimpers, then screams as Spock places the $1.98 prop on the Chief's chest. Uhura looks away, giving the first sign that, although she looks quite fetching in her Mirror Universe outfit, she is actually quite frightened. Feeling any ill effects, Captain? Yeah, now that you mention it. That beam-up was quite the bumpy ride. Better check us out, Doctor. Well, yes, sir. With that, Kirk finds he and his trio of confused comrades some alone time in sickbay. With extremely impressive deductive skill, Kirk figures out they are all in a parallel universe where, among other distasteful things, McCoy's medical staff places bets on the suffering of their patients. And worse yet, the good doctor himself carelessly spills acid without cleaning up after himself. Okay, so figuring out the problem is halfway to solving it, right? They make a plan to return home, replicating the effects of the ion storm that got them in this mess in the first place. But until then, they will need to blend in. When in Rome, after all. As they separate to perform their respective tasks, Uhura admits to her captain that she is frightened. Kirk assures her that she's just fine and that she is the only one that can do it. Feeling empowered, she heads to the bridge, the first place where she will prove that she is quite the badass in her own right. Kirk is also feeling a little nervous. After all, he's the target of any a-hole who wants to move up in rank. After getting his own reassurance from the magic mirror on the wall, it's time to kick his own badass machismo into high gear. By the way, what are their evil Empire counterparts up to in the peaceful Federation universe? Well, leave it to our Spock to figure it all out within a few minutes. Actually, it's much easier to spot barbaric a-holes in a peaceful universe than the reverse.
And
the evil quartet are dragged kicking and screaming into the brig, demanding answers as to how they got these wimpy uniforms and what the hell happened to Spock's goatee. Kirk chuckles and offers Spock a bribe. Spock raises an eyebrow, finds the situation fascinating, and walks away. Kirk shouts in protest, "The ultimate 23rd century Karen." In his quarters, Captain Kirk meets Marlena Moreau, a.k.a. the Captain's woman.
Oh, yeah.
The ever-horny Kirk is suddenly less interested in boldly going than boldly coming. But first things first, pump her for information. After that, maybe pump her for, well, let's keep these Trek beats PG rated, shall we?
It's a hard PG.
After a little lovin', it's back in uniform for the captain and his woman. Marlena unwittingly introduces our Kirk to the real source of his evil counterpart's power. Turns out Mirror Kirk isn't such a badass after all. No, he just uses his stolen Tantalus field to disintegrate his enemies. That is, so long as his target is standing precisely on the right spot, hitting his mark, and is visible on the 10-inch monitor screen. Uhura reveals that Kirk is ordered to annihilate the Hawkins if they don't comply. Resistance is futile with these impatient Empire overlords. Our crew puts their plan into action. Scotty needs to short out the main phaser couplings and siphon power off to the transporter. So Uhura needs to distract Mirror Sulu from his security board. She does so in the most sensual way possible. I push you away and you come back. This time, you didn't come back. This is a public service announcement. If Joe's bad impersonation of Uhura is making you lose wood, well then just keep looking at her picture here. Sulu takes Uhura's bait and fails to notice the blinking light on the panel. Then Uhura slaps the crap out of Sulu and pulls out her knife. You take a lot of chances, lady. So do you, you toxic male. So do you. Sulu is embarrassed as the security guys loitering in the background snicker. Uhura sachets off the bridge. Uhura badass mission number 1 accomplished. In the meantime, Kirk has to deal with a botched assassination attempt by Mirror Chekhov, which results in only a mere bloody fat lip for the captain. Nice try, but now it's time for the agony booth for you, you bad boy. Kirk also has to look over his shoulder as Mirror Spock himself may make his own attempt to bump off the captain. Although he claims he has no desire to be captain himself and is happy to be a lesser target. However, if the formerly badass Kirk keeps getting wimpy, Spock may have no choice but to sick his Vulcan henchman on him. Take your best shot, Spock. By then, my 3 comrades and I will be safely back in our own universe. Well, Kirk has spoken too soon. Kirk and company are met in sickbay by Mirror Sulu and his gang of thugs.
Joe just looks so
Fortunately, Marlena has her well-manicured fingernail hovering over the button of the Tantalus field.
Uh-oh.
She eliminates Sulu's muscle men one by one, but inexplicably leaving Sulu alive. Well, no matter. He can't possibly win a mano-a-mano against even the wimpy version of Kirk, and he is soon out for the count. Ah, but crap! Mirror Spock arrives on the scene. His curiosity about the landing party's bizarre behavior since returning from the surface has been piqued. Another fight ensues, and Spock can only be beaten by smashing a pot over his head. McCoy shoos the others to the transporter room. He'll catch up after treating Spock. Ah, good old McCoy. He's a first-rate healer in any universe. Shortly after, Spock wakes up and shows his gratitude by performing a forced mind meld on McCoy to get the lowdown on the landing party's shenanigans. Marlena takes Kirk back to the transporter room. She decides that she would rather come back to the Prime Universe with him. Well, sorry, babe, but there's only room for 4. Oh, yeah? Touch my phaser, you big stud. Now, Captain Kirk could never hit a girl, but thankfully, he doesn't have to make that judgment call. Uhura sneaks up behind Marlena, and the catfight ensues.
Oh, yeah.
And ends shortly thereafter. Uhura has wasted no time in whooping Marlena's butt. Uhura badass mission number 2 accomplished. Marlena can only slink away and sulk. Ah, crap again! Spock enters the room. I've got to have my captain back. You're too wimpy to deal with. Fine, but first consider this. Mirror Spock. I contend that your empire is illogical. How long can it possibly last? Oh, I'd say about 240 years. Side note, turns out the empire will fall much sooner. See DS9's crossover episode. And Kirk retorts, exactly, so you should be proactive in overthrowing this evil empire of yours. This from Scotty, who actually has had very little dialogue in this episode. Captain, get your ass in the transporter chamber. The clock is ticking, Captain. Besides, I need some ace in the hole to take on the whole empire by myself. Funny you should mention that, Spock. Just so happens, there's this nifty little gadget in my quarters. It disintegrates your enemies and annoying Karens with a single push of a button. Isn't that right, Marlena? She doesn't respond. She's still embarrassed by her quick defeat in the girl fight with Uhura. Kirk takes his place in the transporter chamber, much to Scotty's relief. So, what's it gonna be, Spock? Tyranny or freedom? Good or evil? Goatee or clean-shaven? It's your choice, my cunning little Vulcan. Spock raises an eyebrow and grins slyly. Captain Kirk, I shall consider it. Mirror Spock activates the transporter and sends them all home to their prime universe. No doubt, when their mirror counterparts beam in, they're going to be really, really pissed. Back in the prime universe, Captain Kirk goes over the events they have just experienced. Then, a newly transferred lieutenant named Marlena Moreau appears on the bridge, seeking his signature for some mundane purchase order or something. Spock raises an eyebrow. Oh, she's just a nice girl. We could be friends. Besides, I brought back just the right lingerie for her. With that, Uhura winks at Kirk. Little does he know that she brought home her Mirror Universe Empire uniform for them both to enjoy later in her quarters.
In Joe's fan fiction.
In Joe's perverted mind, you mean? Can we agree that I just do the worst William Shatner ever?
Is there a worst? It's a Shatner impression. Do they get worst? I don't know, because mine's terrible. All right, anyway, that's the beats. So let's get down and dirty and really tell us how you feel. You know, what are you thinking? How does this one strike you? Eric, our guest, Eric Kramer, what do you think?
I mean, this was the one back when I watched this as a kid. This is one of the episodes that cemented me as a fan. I mean, this is easily my top 5, if not like one of my top 2 favorite episodes of Star Trek.
I agree.
It's just before doing this a few days ago, I watched it again, start to finish, and just enjoyed the hell out of it like I was watching it for the first time.
Now, Eric, did you watch any of the follow-ups in the successive series or no?
No. I mean, yeah, maybe like bits and pieces, but I've never, the other series I've never watched from like start to finish. I pick up occasional episodes and stuff here and there, and then, scenes that YouTube throws at me. But
that's funny. My nephew has never watched an entire episode of Star Trek, but he's watched a bunch of scenes on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'll quiz him, and he'll know like a lot. Like, getting smaller hits of Star Trek, I don't think is a shameful thing at all.
I mean, I will go so far as to say that nothing has lived up to the original series. It may have been different. It may have been very good in their own way, but those original characters, my God, that music, the look of that universe. I mean, the creation of that starship, which is just iconic, and has never really been duplicated. You know.
No.
And I'll say this. What's interesting watching it again was now we're watching the CGI and enhanced versions of the original show.
Right.
So better backdrops, better, but they do they do a completely animated Enterprise. And I gotta say, I think I like the old Enterprise better. I don't, like it looks like there's a physical presence to the old one.
Right.
That the CGI one just doesn't have. Yeah, it's more detailed and it's more, but it actually it doesn't look as real as like that original Enterprise in the original series. I believe that sucker could fly through space.
Right.
And I feel like I'm just looking at animation. And I don't know if that's just because I'm used to it now and just sort of feeling like this is the way it should always look. But something about that original handcrafted Enterprise. And then when you look at YouTube will send me down videos of them restoring the original Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
And you suddenly realize like all the detail, all the texture, everything that went into building that.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing piece of work.
I definitely see what you're saying, and not to make excuses, but it just does happen to be so sad that when they did remaster the special effects, they did it in 2006. Because that's when digital effects were really terrible.
By the way, none of this is bad and it's all fine. I'm not saying
right. Yeah.
I'm just saying I just miss that look of the original series. I miss that original Enterprise.
I think one of the advantages of the remastering, well, a couple of them. Number one, thank goodness they didn't go the full on George Lucas thing where they just throw out stuff for the sake of throwing it out.
Right.
And it did give an opportunity to correct some bad special effects. I can remember a lot of shots, stock footage of the Enterprise coming at the camera and just winks out along the edges.
Right. Yeah.
Because the maps were bad and so forth. So we had that. But again, Eric, I know what you're saying too, because that's a big problem I have with so-called new Trek is it's so CGI and so animated. It's like I have even more trouble immersing myself in the universe there because it's like I'm watching a cartoon.
Right. And that was that was one of the comments we made about Section 31, or certainly I'm not Section
very much 31. So in that, yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, okay, we get it. You can create whole worlds and tunnels that go on for miles and toss a little of that money to the writers.
I mean, well, I was on that topic, and John, I found it interesting that you brought this up with your nephew. I'm going to go so far as to say that being able to get the essence of Star Trek stories from seeing clips here and there, I think that's a big testament to the performances, the writing, direction, because it's easier to fill in the blanks with those clips and a lot of stuff that came after it.
Right. And let's remember the 60s, 1967. They're still showing Ponderosa, and I think the Fugitive was still on, these very sort of staid, earthbound, in some ways gritty shows. We had black and white TV at my house till 1975. And there's just something about the original series of Star Trek that really holds up in black and white and does feel very real, like you can touch it. Which makes sense because that ship was a model and they shot it many different ways with practical special effects, much like they did on A New Hope for Star Wars. There were very much like analog objects.
Right.
And they had a depth and they had a weight, and you felt like, I could put my hand on that. and then you get this sort of green glowing glob kind of special effects, which I personally don't hate, but I did play a lot of video games in the early 2000s, so I was used to seeing that kind of animation in the cutscenes. I always look at that and I go like, oh boy, that's so cutscene. just waiting to get to the good stuff. Showed with us, showed.
Well, the thing is, though, and this is where I'm squarely with Eric. It's like, again, watching the most current Trek, there's such a desire, it seems, to make it so shiny, and I don't know what the word is, but John, what was my biggest complaint about Picard season 3? Turn on the damn lights. They kind of set a mood. I can't see this.
It's so funny. I different show, of course, but when I first started watching the X-Files, it was like, there's a light switch right beside you. Why do you have to enter every room with your flashlight? Turn on this. And then on CSI, it was the same thing. Oh, this is a crime scene. Well, maybe turn the lights on so that you can see stuff and you're not stepping all over the evidence. I did want to save some of these comments. This one's from Melanie Jean. I like all the Mirrorverse episodes, going back to Enterprise, tying it in with the Tholian Web. That was really cool, Eric. You know, we might make you watch the Enterprise episode.
I'll watch it.
Well, believe me, we're not trying to bait you with another Section 31. This is a good one. But I think you're serious. I think John and I both, I'm sure, believe that you would find that one be very enjoyable because it harkens back or forward, in this case, to some classic Trek, from TOS.
Right.
Very nifty, very great art direction. I mean, they recreated those sets expertly. Anyway, another episode there, but.
Right, and they wrote it in such a way that Mirror Mirror definitely happened. Like, they shaped everything around Mirror Mirror. There was a prequel, there was a sequel, and things that happened in other episodes of TOS relate, like Tholian Web, as Melanie Jean says. It's really extraordinary what they managed to do. They love the fans on that show.
Going back, right? Like if the original series stuff never made an impact, you wouldn't go back and revisit it.
That's an excellent point. You're right.
Yes.
It's just that stuff is those stories are just they carry over generations, so to speak.
Well, and this has to be, I would think, the number one most followed up upon episodes of TOS. I mean, literally a dozen follow-ups over the years.
Right.
And all the Apocrypha goes right to it. There's books. I think Raphael was mentioning, although Raphael, you and I have never had this talk. I hate Star Trek Continues. I hate it. But they did go to it. So, well, that's fine. But here's why I hate it. Here's why I hate all the Apocrypha. Hey, I got a napkin and I drew a picture of me kissing Spock. So now that's canon. Spock kissed John. Canon. Like, well,
not to mention strangely enticing. That is too bad because I Eric, maybe you'd be interested in this if you want to find it on YouTube, but I did quite enjoy the Star Trek Continues sequel to Mirror Mirror.
Would you ever watch that stuff, Eric? Would you ever watch?
Yeah, no. I've watched a couple. It pops up, and of course, when you watch one, that's all you
put on the rabbit hole.
But yeah, no, I've definitely watched a few of those. Yeah.
Here's my problem, and Eric, I'm going to try to recruit you on my side, and Raphael, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm sorry. It's just a sore spot with me. But here's the thing. There were gatekeepers to all of this. And sometimes gatekeepers are bad, but sometimes gatekeepers are good. I would not want to create something for Star Wars that George Lucas hated.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to create it just for me. Like, I might as well just make something original. if I'm going to make something just for me. You know, I think the fact anybody who's gotten on television, and back me up on this one, Kramer, at least 100 people said, yes, that person can be on.
Yeah.
And that's like an accomplishment. That's like a real accomplishment. Were they all geniuses? No, of course not. They never are. Do they love the show as much as I do? Do they love the work? No, of course not. If they didn't go with me and they went with someone else, does that mean he's better? No, not necessarily. Maybe.
Yeah, you got that right. I got some stories, pal.
I mean, every one of us has some story of a guy who got the gig that we didn't. And in my case, he's a guest on my show right now.
One I took from you, but you took one from me.
Did I take one from you?
Oh, I never knew this.
Oh my God, the Wayans brothers space thing, was that?
Oh, were you up for Homeboys, Eric?
You took, Homeboys. You took that role from me.
Oh my God, we've never had this conversation. You were up in the running for Homeboy?
This is very enlightening.
One, we did that. No, we were up for that. They chose you bastard.
You know who else was up for that? Paul Dooley. Getty Watanabe was up for that.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I sat beside those guys when I was auditioning for that. And then when I went to network, it was me and Fred Stoller. Do you remember Fred?
Yeah.
Used to write for Seinfeld. He was on Seinfeld a couple of times as an ex-boyfriend of, oh God, I've forgotten her name, Elaine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing so much better without her, even though he's a loser and she's so mad at him. Anyway.
Now, I will say the one weakness with Mirror Mirror, in my view, which they did reconcile and there was redemption there.
Yeah.
And they did this in other episodes too, because it was of the time. But why is Uhura portrayed as such a little damsel in distress for the first half?
She's not.
Oh, you disagree?
I don't think she's I don't think she's a damsel in distress for 1 minute. She has one moment where she's like, because if any of them would admit it, they're all scared to death.
Well, that's a
good point.
You know what I mean? Like everybody's like, what the hell is going on? She has that one moment, but she doesn't go, come with me. She doesn't go, she knows what she has to do and she goes and she does it.
There are quite a few times in the original series that I can remember of her actually saying, like, Captain, I'm scared. But one of the reasons why I think that works is because she expresses emotion at other times. God, I wish I could remember what episode it is, but there's one where it's Mr. Spock on the bridge. He's got the chair, and she
Carbonite maneuver.
Oh, is it Carbonite? She basically expresses being agitated by him because he is so emotionless.
Right.
And she, by complaining about it, shows that she is not. She's full of life. She has a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings. She is very young. So that's what I don't.
Very young, but also she never backed down from what she had to do. Nobody ever had to save Uhura.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted to. There were times when they would want to save her, but she was very good at taking care of herself, which is amazing. I want
to thank you both seriously, because I kind of turned my mind around, because I think I might have been unfairly a bit critical of the writing of the character in this one episode, when I'm probably thinking things more like Plato's stepchildren. After I'm frightened, well, all you gotta do is kiss Shatner. What's the big deal?
Yeah, but at that point she knew Shatner. She knew what she was getting into. Any other down and dirty opinions or thoughts anybody wants to dig up?
No,
it's we'll get more into it as we go with other sections too. But
yeah, I mean, everything I love about Star Trek was in this episode, from the music to I will say I just love Nimoy in this, because he makes the smart choice. Like all other versions of Spock after this always lean into the emotional. Like they go to the emotional like right away. And if when they're being logical, they're being fucking condescending. Like they
well, as we saw in Enterprise,
come across as pompous, you know, and that was never the case with, and that's why, like when you were thinking of when Uhura would call him out, he's just like, no, just the way I am.
Well, she had the last word. That's for certain. Not to mention her,
like the Galileo
singing ability. I mean, she was a well-rounded, versatile person. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Galileo 7 too. You know, Nimoy, not the best of scripts written for him, but somehow he took it and he made it work. You know, it was never. It was just. It was an episode of him sort of battling logic. I've made the right decisions the whole time, but it was never pompous. It was never condescending. It was always just matter of fact.
And I think the natural evolution of that came in the movies later on.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
For
sure. And let's not forget that he directed 4, but I think he directed 3 as well.
He directed 3, yeah.
Yeah. So, here's a guy who knew the ins and the outs, although he was always great at that. You know what? This really ties into our next segment.
Well, let's do it.
Let's talk about your most valuable player in this episode. We've heard a lot of great things about Spock. Eric, do you want to stay with Spock as your MVP, or
I say this is a group award.
Oh,
like I think that whole cast knocked it out of the park.
Oh,
not a weak link. I know we talked about Scotty not having, or James Doohan not having like a lot of dialogue, but still like right on track. Like Nichelle Nichols was great. Like again, George Takei was best work he's ever done.
Yeah,
not like there's so many ways to go over the top with a character like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just believed he was a slime ball. You just believed it. Like he was just so.
Which is amazing, considering he had been asked to do mostly like physical stuff, like take your shirt off and get greased up. You're a swordsman now. In Naked Time. Yeah, in the Naked Time.
And I also wonder if this was not long after he was finished with the Green Berets, because had that run over any longer than it did, he may have missed out entirely on this part in this episode.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, because up to that point, more or less, I mean, Chekhov was given all of his lines he was going to have originally.
Yep.
Which is interesting because I remember hearing, I don't know if this was official, but I remember hearing someone theorize that the reason why they added Chekhov was because he had the Beatles haircut.
Yeah.
He was so
young.
Yeah,
that was yeah. They wanted to appeal to the young girls.
Yeah, I think that's the more accepted truth versus, well, we want to bring a Russian because Russians are in space too. Then well, that might have been part of the thinking, but I think it's more likely that let's bring in the little boy toy and get the young ladies involved.
And actually, on that, I had always thought, they brought a Russian on board, but like he's not running the place. He's like the ensign. He's the young punk. So I always felt like NASA, the executive branch of the White House, I always felt like they were like, yeah, he's just a little punk, the Russian. Yeah.
I think bits of this are all probably accurate, but let's not forget, we know better. We just sang Uhura's praises, but for the casual viewer, I mean, she was a, outer space telephone operator. They didn't get more into it than they should have. So
right.
But it was the representation is my point.
Yeah,
they were there. They were doing important work.
It's interesting because Josh did bring up earlier in the chat Strange New Worlds and how she was introduced as a character in Strange New Worlds. And she's a central character, but she's new. She's not totally committed to being in Starfleet yet.
Right.
She's not totally committed to being on a 5-year mission. She hasn't advanced to the Uhura that we know from TOS, and that's really cool. I like that. I don't love everything about Strange New Worlds, but I like a lot of things about it.
No, they definitely get her character right in SNW. I agree.
Now, I will say, and maybe this is just me being an old gray-haired old man. Take it for what it's worth. This dusty old opinion of mine.
Talk about your hair, you son of a bitch. Full-headed, thick-haired asshole. Okay, whatever.
Oh, Eric, what's your problem? Yeah, come
on. Eric, if I could rock it like you, I would.
You even had me on the bottom of the screen, for Christ's sakes. All right, whatever. Whatever. No. Make your point.
I actually want to say Marlena Moreau, the character played by Barbara Luna, the Captain's woman. Is it just because I'm old, or is she kind of special? She got something going on.
Well,
oh my God,
young or old, that's true. Come on.
You know what? And she was really good.
Yeah.
You know, like she played her like smart, conniving. Like she got to show being hurt. She got to show she was really good. Really good, I thought.
Stop me if I'm going too far, but honestly, there's some Lady Macbeth stuff going on there.
Oh my God, yes. Are you kidding? Like, absolutely. That had never occurred to me, but absolutely.
I always wrote her off. I never really focused on her, but the last couple of times I've watched it, I'm just like, I believe that she was a regular character in this other universe. She was a very important staple character.
Well, think about when she's brought in the Prime universe at the end. Even then, just as a simple yeoman, quote unquote, she's self-assured. She's not kind of cowering before the great Captain.
True. She's not your standard yeoman.
And I also think that there might have been some thought process there when they made the Enterprise 2-parter in writing Hoshi, especially.
Oh, yes. Yeah. A lot was borrowed from her, which was great because, she's generally considered a throwaway character because she was only in this one episode. But in that other universe, she was very important and she conveys that really well.
Yeah. The only drawback with the original series was they were all one-offs.
Yeah.
Because that's a character that you would have liked to have seen more of. That's a character that you would have liked to have seen Kirk have some kind of relationship or somebody somebody that could bring out another side of him.
Right.
Well, aspects to a character in a Starship Captain in particular, I don't think they would dare to even think about it until we got into the later series, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean, Yeoman Rand, I mean, that's why she would. Well, no, right? That's why she was there originally, because she was supposed to be
she was definitely supposed to be in. I don't know if a love interest is the right term, but she was definitely there to be driving force.
In the books that they said that she was. That's why she was there. Like she was. That's what that was supposed to turn into.
I mean, that was Gene Roddenberry's take.
My ass, but
yeah. No, Gene Roddenberry was always introducing these girls that were basically secretaries, and they were on the bridge, and it was very Mad Men. It was very like, check her out. But I mean, it was
they got it started. I mean, in the original series, I mean, there was a Starfleet regulation that women can't be captains. Obviously, that wasn't real progressive. But you know what? They started
one of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever written.
Oh my God. Worst and last. But
that was the last, and it was the last episode too.
Yeah. Briefly, John, I won't go into. We've already discussed it adequately, but I'll give my vote to Kirk.
Oh yeah.
Just in terms of how he has to, take command in this, and I have a bit in trivia which I'll expound on this a little bit, but the duality is most present in him. I think those are more caricatures other than Spock, but this one's like he really had to call upon different methods and different emotions to pull this off. So I give it to the chat.
You know, that is a very good point, because the scene where evil Kirk is trying to bribe good Spock is hilarious,
Right.
but
You
very
want credits?
real.
I'll give them to you. Whatever credits are.
We got Dr. Gull with us. Marlena in the Prime universe could have been much more than just a yeoman. There was potentially. Absolutely. Gene was very into the girls. Let's be honest. Oh, 100%. Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite aspects of this episode is Nichelle Nichols' tummy. I got some trivia about that one.
Well, maybe that's our segue.
Maybe that's our segue. I think it's time.
Oh, I'm overcredited in this section.
Joe Townsel always has the best trivia, so he's going to get his tidbits out, folks. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready to throw it. And then, of course, I want you guys to jump in too. But Marlena Monroe, played by the lovely Barbara Luna, of course, as we mentioned, was Hawk's girlfriend in season 2 of Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Only for 2 episodes, but she made a presence there again. She also guest starred on TJ Hooker with Bill Shatner.
Oh,
so and she and was on Mission Impossible. I mean, she did a lot of guest star turns that were just very memorable.
Of course, Mission Impossible, also a Desilu production. I always like to point that out. There is many times a one-to-one relationship between the two shows. Leonard Nimoy, not the only element, but
Right.
there were several times where the bad guy was William Shatner on Mission Impossible. Two that I can think of.
Exactly. As mentioned before, they were originally in first drafts, admittedly, but there was going to be some changes to what we eventually got in the finished product. Originally, Kirk was the only one that went to the other universe, so it was just him alone. And originally, as written, it wasn't an evil empire. It was more just kind of backward and just not sophisticated, but still a threat in some way to him. And the thing that made him recoil in horror in these earliest drafts is it was McCoy the goatee, not Spock. So I think that all worked out for the better, don't you, Eric?
Although my goatees are looking a little more Klingon right now. But
that's good too.
It is Vulcan.
Let's talk about the writing on this. It was written by Jerome Bixby, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Jerome Bixby was a science fiction writer, and he actually adapted this from a story that he wrote in 1953 for Amazing Stories magazine, and it was called One Way Street.
Oh, wow.
It's not the first time he would do that. There was also a story that he adapted from one of his short stories, and it became that really famous Twilight Zone episode with Billy Mumy.
Oh,
where he sends them out to the field.
Oh my God,
it's a good life. Yes,
right.
Got to go to the cornfield.
Do you have another tidbit, Mr. Townsel?
Oh, I think I might be able to rummage up 1 or 2 more. Let's see. I found this one interesting off of IMDb. It's the only time that anyone actually responds to McCoy's "I'm a doctor, not a ... And that would be Scotty saying, "Now you're an engineer."
Okay, I'm getting yelled at by Chris. It's Moomy, not Mummy.
It is Moomy.
Is it
not
Moomy?
your mommy?
Okay.
Moomy. John, you probably have a couple ones I might have found. So why don't we hear from you?
Yeah, I dug up to memory.
Well, I'll press forward, John. If I see you clear up,
you start messing with dual universes here.
Yeah, we go. I think John's being ionized over to the mirror universe. He'll come back clean shaven, but this was the only episode, except for one, where we do see the Enterprise orbiting from right to left.
Right.
Eric, to your point of revamping and remastering, this is one of those occasions where, fortunately, they were able to correct a blunder because they kind of forgot that about halfway through the episode. It started orbiting the other way. They fixed it in the pre-mastered, but The only other time we see the Enterprise going from right to left is in Shore Leave.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and that was no conscious thought there at the time, but this is supposed to be a big impact. Oh, it's backwards. It's going the other way. That type of deal.
Dr. Gahul says, I'm glad the mirror universe was barbaric, not just backwards, because the agony booth is an excellent bit of stuff. It is.
Indeed. Yeah. Even though watching Tuvix is worse, apparently.
Melanie Jean says, Hoshi kind of did the same thing in reverse. She got cozy with Archer and ended up poisoning him, then getting cozy with Mayweather. Marlena Moreau was a captain's woman, and she'd do it again.
Well, again, I mean, probably for the times within that mirror universe, that was a different way of going about achieving her objectives. But I definitely think the two women are two of a kind.
So yeah, I wanted to throw in that there were alternative titles for this episode. When it was shown in France, it was called Mirror. Of course, the French word for mirror.
Mm-hmm.
When it was shown in Germany, it was called A Parallel Universe. Very German.
To the point.
Very to the point.
Very, yeah, exactly. Very, very to the point.
Okay. When it was shown in Japan, it was called Terror of the Ion Turbulence.
Now that's not to the point.
Wow. Okay.
Very poetic. Very poetic. The Japanese could be very poetic. And then in Spain, it was called Mirror, Little Mirror.
Little Mirror.
Interesting.
Maybe that was based on the draft where they were backwards instead of evil. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might be more of a phrase in Spain
Sure.
than Mirror, Mirror. The composer, the music for this one, which Eric mentioned, composer Fred Steiner adapted the Romulan theme music that he had composed for Balance of Terror to represent the Empire.
One of my favorites. Oh, interesting.
And he also stole some cues from the soundtrack that he had done for Mud's Women, which we reviewed just weeks ago. Here's another one, unless you want to go, Joe.
I'll throw one. I'll throw it two more, then we can wrap it up with yours. But
Yeah.
I just think it worth mentioning. We also looked at Trials and Tribulations from DS9 a couple months back, and every Enterprise scene was taken from the Trouble with Tribbles, except for the ending where Kirk is signing the thing, the docket, and they basically plastered Cisco over Marlena Monroe from this episode.
That's really cool.
It's kind of weird when you think about it, because he's kind of flirting with Marlena originally, and it's still him, but he's talking to Cisco, so make of it what you will.
I do love how Melanie Jean picked this up. She, in her conversation with Kirk, said something about if she had to work her way through every man in the fleet. And Kirk said, you could, and she slaps him.
Yeah.
Well, she tries to. He catches it.
And then Bill pulls a typical, what I meant was.
Let me mansplain it to you.
Honey, you know I didn't mean it that way. This is wild to me. I think I always had a suspicion of this. Tell me what you think of this. With the exception of the final scene on the bridge, which we're talking about, which plays after a flyby cutscene of the Enterprise. Otherwise, the entire episode is in real time, with each minute of the episode matching an on-screen minute of the story.
Wow, that's phenomenal editing if that's true, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so there was a sense that maybe we didn't pick up, but there was a sense of, as they say in your script writing classes, having a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, there's the urgency for sure.
Having that clock. I love this story. So I'm just going to read it as I cribbed it from Memory Alpha. During the filming of this episode, Barbara Luna, who played Marlena Moreau, had strep throat and a 103-degree fever. So she couldn't do the kissing scenes with Shatner. So they put them off for 2 weeks. And they finally had her come back in to shoot the kissing scenes with him while they were shooting The Deadly Years. This was
Did they forget to take the old age makeup off him? And
Yeah, I was going to say.
now the problem is because she had been ill, Barbara Luna had lost some weight, and her tight costume, her tight tiny costume, was baggy. And so that's why they came. And there was actually a picture that Joe had in the beats of her wearing the outfit, where it's that sheer, like Mrs. Roper from Three's Company kind of.
Yeah.
Talk about losing wood. Thanks, John.
But underneath it, she's got a crazy tight bathing suit. She's got a crazy bikini. And it ended up being fantastic. Everybody loved how it looked. That scene is so sexy to me.
Oh, of course. And it's a good fix for that problem.
It's also it's a smartly written scene. Like they, I just love that they make her smart and conniving, and and she has an agenda as well.
Oh yeah.
Like it's really good.
Totally agree. And there was I guess there was some flirtation in an early draft with him being married to Marlena.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which unfortunately, if that happened, maybe we would have seen more of her in the Prime Universe. That'd been, what could have been.
She was something. She was something. Got another. Oh yeah, that's Chris who writes says, "I always write smart women." Absolutely do that by all means. Dr.
Well, I do too, but usually in the form of like suggestive emails. So.
Let's see. I did have another story. And this one there's two things here that are ridiculous. One is this is the most ridiculous bit of trivia ever. So hold on to this. This is my gift to you. Mirror Mirror is the only episode in which Uhura is seen in a moving turbo lift.
That's right.
All right, that one's dumb. But this one's cool. So you'll notice, of course, you know this, that in those two-piece outfits they were wearing, those tiny little outfits that Uhura and Marlena Moreau were wearing, they were showing their belly buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you've probably heard, and us boys know this story because we were young fellas when we heard this story. Showing a belly button on TV was really outrageous in the 60s and the 70s.
I Dream of Jeannie. She couldn't do it.
Uhura and Marlena Moreau both showed their navels in various scenes. This was considered controversial at the time. Reportedly. So legend goes that the crew was instructed to go to the observer from Standards and Practices and tell him it was lunchtime. And then while he was having lunch, they would shoot those scenes with the belly buttons.
Take the censor to lunch. It was probably just not caught, but McCoy's babes, when they were hanging on his arm at the end of Shirley the previous season, they showed their navels as well, but it was pretty quick.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know how often navels were shown on Wild Wild West. I suspect they were. There were shows that were.
No, but it's so funny that was such a big deal back in the day.
Yeah.
Now what's funny too is that one thing that was a big deal back in the day, back in an earlier day, was the whole you can't show a couple in the same bed together.
Right.
Well, it's heavily implied that Kirk and Marlena do the dirty deed, but he still only has a twin bed in his quarters, so I don't know how that worked. But
space spooning. I'm just going to put that out there. I have one last story, and it's not really trivia at all. The question has to be asked: what did happen after Spock decided to take over the Empire and make it better? Well, according to this, we learn in Deep Space Nine, the episode Crossover, which uses the mirror universe, I think introduces the mirror universe to DS9.
Their first crossover into that universe. Yes, exactly.
The events that happen in Mirror Mirror lead directly to the fall of the Terran Empire, because after Mirror Spock became the leader and he tried to reform the Empire, they were now vulnerable to attack by the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. The Klingon-Cardassian alliance then takes over the evil Empire. They destroy Spock. They destroy Goatee Spock.
Just
way to go, Kirk.
Oh yeah. Way to go, Kirk.
Well, again, apparently hastening the fall of the Empire, because Spock's 40-year prediction didn't come true in this, as it turned out.
That's right.
And I was, and again, this is for another episode, but I do appreciate the fact that in Mirror Mirror, as well as the follow-ups, they didn't go for the obvious depiction of the Klingons and others. The Klingons didn't become like the good guys. It's basically the Terrans being evil just affected everybody else in a different way, but they were still the same. Otherwise.
Right. Yeah, it was more like the organizing was different under Spock, but
now, Chris, that would make for a very horrifying, effective episode. The Kardashians, yes.
I think that's it. Anybody else want to throw anything else on the table?
I exhausted my list. How about you, Eric?
No, I think that's I think I've talked myself out.
Next week, our very special guest star is not Eric, and that's sad. But the good news is it is Flobo, and it is one of Flobo's least favorite episodes of Star Trek.
And Flobo is in good company, and I wanted to soften the blow by putting a few Tuvix hints into this week, so I think we managed to do that.
So as you see in this picture over to the extreme left, that is Flobo as Tuvok, and of course me as the much beloved Neelix.
I mean, I hardly had to change a thing. It was easy Photoshop, John.
And then Joe is Flober.
I mean, this is what you get when Flobo Boyce and John Weber have a love child. You get Flober.
So we hope you'll join us next week, next Tuesday night, and coming up Thursday.
Can't wait for this.
By request by our good friend Raphael, I am finally going to play for you an episode of the radio show Bold Venture, which was created for Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall so that they could work together. At the time, Bogey was not in great health and unfortunately would never fully recover. And this was really good work that they did. And another thing I love about it too is Humphrey Bogart was a good director, a good producer, and a decent writer. And he insisted that Lauren Bacall have a lot of lead character work in this show. So it is a very good show. I hope people will join me on Thursday when I play you an episode of this series. It's really good. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
And kicking off a month of Hollywood greats, isn't it, John?
That's right. I have actually, Raphael gave me my 4th episode. So coming up in February, thank you very much, Joe, for helping me promote this. Coming up in February, I'm going to play you some radio with Marilyn Monroe. And then we're going to hear a really fantastic show starring Cary Grant called On a Country Road from Suspense. I'm going to play that. One of my favorite radio shows of all time. And there is an episode of Suspense starring Lucille Ball. And that'll come up at the end of the month. And
it's going to be a great month. And John, I appreciate you saying so. And the thing is, between you and I both, we have one good brain to work with. So.
It is a good brain, though. It is. Chris says, Monroe on radio is such a waste. I'll tell you this. she's marrying Charlie McCarthy, the ventriloquist puppet. You're gonna want to hear it.
Yeah, maybe we don't want to see it. We just want to hear it.
You're going to want to hear that.
And Dr. Gahal says, just found you guys. You got a new subscriber. Fantastic. We're so glad to have you with us, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Great.
Now, Joe and I are also going to do our Sunday show, Retro Rangers, where we like to pull out the old dusty video clips. This one, we will be watching old clips of game shows. So if you want to find me on Facebook, I am right there. You can find me so easily. If you have any other game shows you want us to make fun of and to put up, we got some good ones. But if you want to suggest any, you hit me up this week. And of course, I'm on Instagram as well at Hello John Weber. So
hey, just make it an embarrassment of riches. Send them along.
Absolutely. I do have to clear the clips. So, I'll probably take any suggestion that anybody gives me till about Friday, and then I'll have to clear
You
those
have to find the Hugleys on Family Feud.
Did that happen? I haven't seen that episode.
Do you remember this?
No.
Were around. Yeah, we did for charity. The Hugleys went on Family Feud, and it was the most embarrassing for me personally.
No.
I've discovered that I will never win money on game shows because my brain shuts down under pressure.
So it was the cast of the Hugleys on the actual Family Feud.
Back with Family Feud with Louis Anderson.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember who we played because I've blocked it all out of my mind. But I gave some of the most dumbass answers, and then they those bastards made me play for big money.
Oh no!
Like at the end, and I blew it twice, and then finally was like redeemed on the last one, and we won. We at least won some money for charity. But
well, Eric, if it won't embarrass you further, we'll definitely seek it out.
I so want to see it now.
But it's awful. It's terrible. Like DL, all those guys are. I look like I look like a scientific reject from Star Trek. That.
Thanks everybody for watching the show.
Name a favorite soda pop. Pomeranian. It's literally that bad. It's literally that bad.
Eric, I don't know the answer to this question. Have you ever sat on a couch and been interviewed on any TV talk show?
No.
I did one. I did one, and I was on Women Aloud, which was Mo Gaffney's show on Comedy Central, 30 years ago now. And I was so tongue-tied that she had to interrupt me and finish my statement for me.
No. Now, was that Women ALOUD?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yes. Oh God. And she was like, he's a good one. He's a good, like, she's petting me like I was a dog.
Good boy.
No, I'm terrible in interviews. I've done live radio call-in stuff, and I'm horrible. I did do wait. When I did Down Home, I did a pre-interview for the Tonight Show. The Tonight Show called me up and did a pre-interview because they were thinking about having me on, and I was so horrible that they didn't invite me on.
Oh, that's so painful.
Well, who was hosting at the time, Eric?
That was Carson.
That was still Carson, right?
Well, that's what it was. They just didn't want you to outclass them.
No, they were like, I remember hanging up the phone and going, I'm never doing the Tonight Show ever in my career.
At least Carson.
Absolute, just nothing. Wasn't funny, wasn't smart, wasn't nothing. I just, the poor woman interviewing me, well, like the same thing. Like she tried to finish my sentences and stuff for me. And I'd be like, yeah, that. What time do I show up? Oh, you'll call me? Okay.
Oh man.
Oh, terrible.
Brutal.
Terrible.
Well, we're not all good at everything.
Oh my
Ain't
God.
that the truth? All right, my friends, this has been a lovely episode. What a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for being with us, Eric.
My
You
God,
got to
thanks
come
for
back.
having me.
We have things in mind for you, Eric, so you got to come back.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It's not a threat.
And so just one more reminder. Next week we're doing Tuvix, and Flobo Boys finds it one of the most racist episodes of Star Trek.
I'm sure this graphic doesn't help.
So join us for that. And where's my outro? Here we go. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.
Retro Trackers. Retro Trackers. Captain John and Commander Joe. Retro Trackers. We love the Star Treks. Retro Trackers. The nerd muscles getting flex. Retro Trackers. Get down with the retro. Retro Trackers. Let's get done. Retro Trackers. Coming back with the recap. Retro Trackers. Reviewing has some fun. Recap, review, retro, recap, review, trackers, recap, review, retro, recap, review, trackers. Recap, review, retro, recap.